Welcome to Life Stories, where every story is built from truth, emotion, and the lessons we carry forward. In today's episode, we bring you a powerful tale of love, ambition, betrayal, and the strength it takes to rebuild from ruins. It's the story of a man who lost everything he thought mattered, only to discover what truly does. Subscribe to our channel to begin today's journey with Life Stories. This isn't just about revenge, it's about legacy, redemption, and the quiet courage to start again. Let's begin. They say architecture is about space, how we design it, how we shape it, how it makes us feel. But I've come to believe it's also about trust. You trust that the beams will hold, that the walls will stand, that the foundation will never betray you. I used to think I understood that. I didn't. My name is Mason Drake. I didn't come from money, not even close. My dad laid bricks in the cold Ohio winters, his hands rough and cracked, his back hunched from years of lifting. My mom stitched wedding dresses out of our kitchen, often falling asleep with pins still stuck to her sleeves. That's the world I came from. No trust funds, no family business, just sweat, sacrifice, and the quiet dignity of those who build things for others but never have much to call their own. I was supposed to follow in my father's footsteps. But even as a child, I was mesmerized not by what he built, but how it came together, the invisible thinking behind it all. I wanted to use my mind, not just my hands. So I studied, earned scholarships, pushed through sleepless nights in college. I graduated top of my class and landed a coveted internship at Whitestone Architecture, a firm known for designing the kinds of spaces you see in design magazines, the ones with impossible glass curves and entire walls that breathe. That's where I met Samantha Carter. If I close my eyes, I can still see her that first day. Poised, deliberate, completely at ease in a room full of men twice her age. She wasn't just beautiful. She was sharp. She could dissect a blueprint in seconds, spotting flaws I hadn't even noticed. Samantha was the daughter of Jonathan Carter, founder of Carter Real Estate Group, a juggernaut on the East Coast. She and her brothers, Brad and Luke, were heirs to an empire. I was the intern with Ohio dust still on my shoes. We should have never crossed paths, but we did. She interrupted one of my design presentations, challenging me, questioning my assumptions. When it was over, she pulled me aside and said, "Most architects draw buildings. You draw experiences." I'll never forget that. It was the first time someone had seen something more in me. We were inseparable after that. Against all odds and the very vocal doubts of her father, we fell in love. And not the kind of love you shout about on social media. It was quieter, deeper, like a shared blueprint no one else could read. Within a year, we were married. Her father, ever the businessman, gave me a corner office at Carter Real Estate as a wedding gift. "If you're going to be part of the family," he said, "you might as well be part of the business." Those early years were golden. My designs brought in awards and changed the way Carter built. We focused on sustainability, on breathing life into forgotten corners of cities. Samantha handled the client relationships. I built the dreams. We were a team, not just in name, but in purpose. But time has a way of shifting foundations when you're not looking. Her father's health began to fade, and the power dynamics within the company twisted like steel under pressure. Brad and Luke started excluding me from meetings. They redirected teams from my projects. They called it restructuring. Samantha told me not to worry. "Everyone's just adjusting," she said. But I noticed her late-night texts, the ones she hid when I walked into the room, the way she stopped asking about my work, the dinners she missed, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about Derek Blake. He was everything I wasn't. Slick, charming, born into money, and hired by Samantha to lead business development. He moved through rooms like he owned them, and he looked at Samantha like he already did. Still, I wanted to believe. In us, in what we had built. Until one night, I overheard Brad and Luke in a closed-door meeting with Derek. "Mason's a liability," Brad said. And then Derek replied, "Your sister sees the bigger picture. She knows what's necessary for the company's future." I stood outside that door for a long time, the voices muffled but clear enough. My wife, my family, my home, all slipping away behind a wall I had once helped design. But I didn't confront them. Not yet, because I was still an architect. And before you tear anything down, you need a plan. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark beside Samantha, listening to the steady rhythm of her breath. Her back was turned to me, as it had been so often in those final months. I stared at the ceiling and realized what no one ever tells you about betrayal. It doesn't roar. It whispers. It creeps. It disassembles your life like blueprints being rolled back, slowly, until there's nothing left on the table. In the morning, I smiled as if nothing had happened. I kissed her forehead. I went to work, and I began drawing the most important plan of my life, my exit. Every great structure begins with a foundation, but what they don't say is that sometimes the first step in building something new is dismantling what no longer serves you. I backed up every one of my designs, saved project drafts, notes, and client lists to a private cloud. I checked legal clauses in my contract, the one I had signed with so much trust and so little caution. I discovered just how vulnerable I really was. They'd built the paperwork around my downfall. But there was one thing they hadn't accounted for: relationships. Real ones. The kind you don't forge over catered lunches and handshakes, but through long nights and promises kept. I started talking to my clients, quietly, carefully. I never made an offer, just asked a question. If things ever changed, would you follow the designer or the firm? One after another, they told me the same thing. We came for the Carter name. We stayed because of you. At home, Samantha was no longer pretending. She worked later. She left her phone face down. There was a distance between us that could have filled a skyscraper. But I didn't let on that I knew. Instead, I built my world in the quiet hours. I moved money to private accounts, found an apartment, rented a small office, and I started assembling a team: young architects, project managers, people who had always believed in the work rather than the politics. The final blow came on a rainy Tuesday. I returned early from a site visit and saw it: Derek's car in our driveway. Sleek, imported, mocking. I didn't go inside. I just stood there in the rain until the cold sunk into my bones. Then I turned around, checked into a hotel, and made the call. Sophia, meet me for coffee. Somewhere quiet. Sophia Ramirez had been my right hand since nearly the beginning. Sharp, loyal, unafraid to speak the truth. Over bitter espresso, I told her just enough. I'm starting something new. Soon. I'll need people I can trust. She didn't blink. I'm in, so are others. Just say the word. 2 weeks later, Thanksgiving arrived, the Carters' favorite occasion to pretend their family wasn't fractured behind the antique china. I arrived alone. Samantha had gone ahead for meetings. The moment dessert was cleared, Brad and Luke asked to speak to me privately. Samantha followed. Derek, too. In their father's old study, surrounded by leather-bound trophies of generations, they delivered the final insult. "We voted on a restructuring," Brad announced. "You're being removed from the business. And her new lover," Luke added with a smug nod toward Derek, "will take your place." I looked at Samantha. She stared at the carpet. No apology, no regret, just silence. I nodded once. No fight, no outburst, just a quiet exit. Because they thought they were ending something. But I was only just beginning. I walked out of the Carter estate that night with nothing but my coat and a quiet sense of purpose. The cold bit through the fabric, but I barely noticed. That kind of betrayal. It doesn't chill you. It burns. And beneath that fire, something even stronger began to take shape. Clarity. By dawn, my new firm, Drake Design and Development, was alive. Every client I had spoken to received a personal message. After years leading design innovation at Carter Real Estate, I'm launching a firm where architecture serves people, not politics. I would be honored to continue our work together. Attached were detailed plans, plans I had saved privately, the true blueprints for every project they cared about. They didn't exist in Carter's files, only in mine. By midday, my phone didn't stop ringing. Some clients were surprised, most were supportive. A few had already signed over. By the end of the week, 7 top staff from Carter had resigned and walked through the doors of my modest downtown office, including Sophia. By the end of the month, our biggest contract, the Westridge Urban Renewal Project, was no longer theirs. It was mine. Samantha called that night. Her voice, for once, wasn't cold, it trembled. "What have you done?" she asked. I told her the truth. "You didn't fire me for cause. You restructured me out. My contract gives me the right to continue with any client who chooses to follow. And they chose silence." "Then, why are you doing this?" "Because the trust was always with me, Samantha. Not the Carter name, me. And you forgot that." In the weeks that followed, Carter Real Estate began to unravel. Without my designs, my clients, my team, they were a legacy without a vision, a machine without fuel. Brad and Luke tried to plug the holes with generic replacements. Derek tried smooth-talking investors and flashing new partnerships, but the results didn't lie. Contracts dissolved, deadlines were missed. Their stock dipped. The whispers in the industry got louder. They lost their edge when they lost Mason Drake. That was when the threats started. Anonymous tips sent to regulators about supposed violations in my projects, baseless claims in blogs that I hadn't truly led the designs I was credited for. Then came the audit threats, credit downgrades, even a break-in at my apartment. Nothing stolen, just destroyed. Architectural models shattered. Photos of Samantha and me sliced through. It wasn't just business anymore. Derek had made it personal. I tightened security, hired a private investigator, started documenting everything. And then came the call I hadn't expected. Jonathan Carter. His voice was old, worn, softer than I remembered. "My sons are ruining everything I built. Derek is a snake, and you were the one who actually gave this company its second life." I said nothing. "I want to stop this," he continued. "Help me." I was quiet for a long time before answering. "Then let's finish what they started, but on my terms." Because I didn't just want revenge anymore. I wanted to build something better from the rubble they left behind, something they never could, something that would stand. The merger wasn't a rescue. It was a reclamation. Jonathan Carter and I met in a quiet conference room at a downtown law firm, neutral ground. He looked older than I remembered. The fire in his voice had dimmed, but his eyes still held a flicker of the man who'd once built an empire from scratch. He slid the papers across the table himself. "This is how we saved the company," he said, "by handing it to the man who should have been running it all along." I reviewed the documents. Drake Design and Development would acquire controlling interest in Carter Real Estate. The name would remain for a time, but the structure, the leadership, the vision would be mine. Samantha supported the deal. I didn't ask why. Maybe guilt, maybe survival instinct, or maybe some part of her still remembered what we once built together. The merger made headlines. Industry analysts called it bold. Investors breathed a sigh of relief. Clients returned. But success wasn't what I thought it would feel like. I expected triumph. Instead, I felt tired, wiser, and maybe somewhere deep down, sad. Because even as I stepped into power, I stepped further away from the man I used to be. Samantha and I shared an office floor now. We passed each other in meetings. We made decisions together. Efficient, professional, civil. And yet some days, I'd catch her looking at me like she was trying to measure what we'd lost. One evening, after a tense strategy session, she knocked on my door. "We need to talk," she said, not asking. I nodded. We sat, for the first time in a long while, without any walls between us. Just two people who had once loved each other so deeply, they built a life, a business, a vision on top of it. "I made mistakes," she said. "Derek, he listened in ways you didn't. He made me feel included. I swallowed hard, and I made you feel excluded, like an accessory to my work." She didn't deny it. We never talked about what we needed. We just assumed we'd always understand. "We were architects who never checked the foundation," I said quietly. That made her smile, just barely. "So what now?" "We rebuild. Not us, but the company, the vision, and whatever we can salvage from all this." And we did. Samantha became Chief Client Officer. Sophia took over as CEO. I stepped into the role of Executive Chairman, focused on design, vision, and the future. We launched the Hudson Riverfront project, the one they tried to bury with my reputation. It became our flagship. Then one day she asked, "Have you moved on?" I hesitated. Then I told her about Olivia, my former executive assistant, now leading our community outreach division. It was new, quiet, careful, and rooted in honesty. "I'm happy for you," she said. And for the first time, I believe she meant it. What I learned through all of this is simple, but it cost me dearly. Revenge might feel satisfying, but it's love, integrity, and vision that last. You can build something remarkable from betrayal, as long as you don't let it define you. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all, that some ruins are meant not to mourn, but to be reimagined. Looking back now, I realize that this story was never just about betrayal or business. It was about identity, about the walls we build around our hearts, the blueprints we draw for our lives, and the resilience it takes to redesign when everything falls apart. I lost a marriage, a company, and a piece of myself. But in return, I gained clarity. I learned that integrity isn't something you hang on a wall. It's what you carry with you when no one's watching. I discovered that real leadership isn't about domination. It's about design, about crafting something meaningful that outlives you. As for Samantha and me, we're not what we were, but we found a kind of peace. We don't talk about the past much anymore. Instead, we talk about the future, of the company, of our work, and of the city we both love. The Hudson Riverfront project broke ground this spring. I stood there in a hard hat, surrounded by cranes and noise and hope, thinking of how far we've come. The skyline is changing. So am I. And Derek? He's a shadow now, a name mentioned only in footnotes and cautionary tales. But he gave me something too, the fire to rebuild. So in a strange way, I thank him. This wasn't the story I thought I was living, but maybe, just maybe, it's the one I was meant to tell. Thank you for listening to my journey. If this story moved you, inspired you, or simply made you reflect, please consider subscribing to Life Stories. We have many more real and emotional journeys to share, stories of love, betrayal, redemption, and the power of starting over. Click the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us for the next chapter. Until then, keep building.